पापा है। ये नेवी पियर का बोट राइड टूर है। माँ बैठी हुई है, ध्यान से बैठा हुआ है। ये पीछे का नज़ारा है। बोट है। देर में बोट चलेगी। ये जो नज़ारा है, लाइट जोड़ रहा है। ये बोट राइड का ट्रिप अब जो है वो स्टार्ट हो चुका है। ध्यान।
Welcome to Shoreline Sightseeing's classic lake tour along the beautiful and historic Chicago shoreline, featuring the 2-mile centerpiece of a 17-mile stretch of continuous shoreline parks, public attractions, and residential neighborhoods, including a bike path right on the waterline, along one of the most open and publicly accessible city shorelines in the world, here at the southwest corner of the Great Lake, Michigan. We began our tour at Navy Pier, completed in 1916 as Municipal Pier Number 1. It was renamed Navy Pier in honor of naval veterans of World War I. It is now a popular recreational center, and along with Millennium Park, it's one of the top tourist attractions in Illinois, averaging over 9 million visitors per year. Attractions include the Children's Museum, the Shakespeare Theater, dining, shopping, and amusement park, concert halls, convention space, bars, ballrooms, and boat rides. One of the most prominent attractions at the pier is the Ferris wheel, known as the Centennial Wheel. This is a new model, the DW60, which opened in May 2016 and was selected and purchased from Dutch Wheels, the Netherlands-based company that built the pier's first wheel, considered the world's top designer and manufacturer of Ferris wheels. The state-of-the-art DW60 is the first and only one of its kind in the U.S. There are similar wheels currently in operation in Hong Kong and Baku, Azerbaijan. Significant features include 2-sided cars that allow for easy loading and unloading, a fortified structure to withstand winds of up to 115 miles per hour, and safety glass capable of weathering intense storms. The first Navy Pier Ferris wheel was relocated to Branson, Missouri, and is still in use there today. During the Second World War, Navy Pier was an active naval training base where pilots were trained for aircraft carriers. Trainees included first President Bush. After the Second World War, it became the campus of the University of Illinois at Chicago into the 1960s, when it went mostly the present configuration opened in 1993 and was expanded and updated in 2015. The to Chicago, the Windy City, the second city of shoulders, or city that works. It's America's third largest city in terms of population after New York and Los Angeles, with a current population of 2.7 million people in the city limits and about 9.5 million in the suburbs. As we tour the lakeshore, we'll have a view of some of America's tallest and most distinguished buildings. We'll review the historical context in which the city and lakefront have developed and briefly survey the ecology of Lake Michigan itself. Head out into the waters of the southwest corner of the Great Lake Michigan, one of the 5 great lakes and the largest body of fresh water in the continent of the United States. The lake is 3.7 miles long from north to south, 18 miles wide at its widest point. It's just slightly smaller than the U.S. state of West Virginia or the country of Ireland. From the shoreline here straight east of the state of Michigan is about 60 miles. The name Michigan is believed to come from the Ojibwa word Michigan, meaning great water. The lake itself was formed along with the other 4 Great Lakes by glaciers receding northward after the end of the last ice age about 10,000 years ago. The average depth of the lake is 279 feet with a maximum depth of 923 feet. The average depth this close to shore is about 25 feet. The St. Lawrence Seaway and the Great Lakes Waterway open the Great Lakes to ocean-going vessels. Wider ocean-going container ships do not fit through the locks on these routes, and thus shipping is limited on the lakes. Despite their vast size, large sections of the Great Lakes freeze in the winter, interrupting most shipping. Icebreakers, including the U.S. Coast Guard vessels Morro Bay and Mackinac, break ice for an average of 120 days a year in various parts of the lakes. The city of Chicago itself started with one trading post in 1773, established by French-Haitian fur trader Jean-Baptiste du Sable. Chicago grew initially along the main branch of the Chicago River. The river is actually the beginning of a system of rivers and now canals effectively connecting Lake Michigan to the Mississippi River, where one can turn south and continue by water to the Gulf of Mexico. The river was first discovered for Europe in 1673 by Louis Joliet and Jacques Marquette, French and French-Canadian explorers charged with the mission of mapping the Great Lakes for the Kingdom of France. They started in Montreal, Quebec, and came down the St. Lawrence River into the Great Lakes, determined to get to the Mississippi River and the Gulf of Mexico. Prior to the discovery of the Chicago River system, they would stop up north at what is now Green Bay and carry their canoes across Wisconsin to get to the Mississippi. The Chicago River proved a much easier route. The natives in the area at the time included Fox, Potawatomi, and Sauk nations. Chief Blackhawk of the Sauk Nation is the namesake for the Chicago Blackhawks hockey team. Chicago is thought to be the French-British derivation of the word Chicagoa, roughly translated as portage of the wild onion or land of the stinking onion. Just west is a super tall skyscraper of black glass and steel, tapering inward as it goes up, with X-like cross bracings on the side. This is 875 North Michigan Ave, which was built as and still commonly called the John Hancock Center. The X-like cross bracing on the side of the building adds structural integrity and minimizes the need for large girders inside the structure. Like the Willis Tower and the Trump Tower of Chicago, it was designed by the Chicago-based firm Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, who continues to specialize in the world's tallest buildings, including the Burj Khalifa Tower in Dubai. The John Hancock Center was completed in 1969. 875 North Michigan Ave includes an observatory on the 94th floor called 360 Chicago. The elevators to 360 Chicago are credited to be the fastest elevators in the Western Hemisphere, with a top speed of 20.5 miles per hour. 360 Chicago includes Tilt, a panel of windows on the south side of the observatory which hydraulically extend about 30 degrees out and over Chicago's famous skyline, offering visitors unique downward-facing views from 1,000 feet up. If you look east out into Lake Michigan, you may be able to see large, stationary, cylindrical-looking structures. The closest one looks like it has a striped circus tent top. These are water intake cribs which supply the city of Chicago with drinking water from Lake Michigan. Water is collected and transported through a tunnel leading from the cribs to filtration plants. These tunnels are close to 200 feet beneath the lake and vary in shape from circular to oval and in diameter from 10 to 20 feet. Lake water enters the cribs and flows through these tunnels to pumps at the Jardine Water Purification Plant, which is the world's largest, just north of Navy Pier. Constructed in the 1960s, it began functioning in 1968. Shortly thereafter, the Ohio Street Beach formed in the bay created by the plant. Together with the Eugene Sawyer plant near 78th Street on the south side, the Department of Water Management delivers nearly 1 billion gallons of water to Chicago and 125 suburbs every single day. Landscaping around the Jardine Water Plant and in the adjoining Milton Olive Park was designed by Dan Kiley, the same architect who designed the Gateway Arch National Park in St. Louis. Chicago was incorporated as a town in 1833 and as a city in 1837, when its population reached 4,000. In 1848, Chicago got its first telegraph and railroad. Two innovations, grain elevators and the Board of Trade's wheat grading standards, quickly transformed the way crops were sold. By 1854, the city was the world's largest grain port and had more than 30,000 residents, many of them European immigrants. The growth of the city was rapid and haphazard, and ultimately resulted in the Great Chicago Fire, which over 3 days in October of 1871 destroyed the downtown and near southwest side, including most of what can be seen here along our tour. Top local historians often cite the rebuilding of the city after the fire, a concentrated effort lasting 2 years, as the beginning of our ongoing tradition of great, innovative architecture.
down, yeah? बैठ जाओ।
Along the north, which borders and protects the harbor, is the Chicago Harbor Lighthouse. It was completed originally in 1893 and located near the World's Fair in Jackson Park, further south. The lighthouse was moved to its current location in 1919, situated to direct night boaters to the opening of the Chicago River. The light is an active aid to navigation and no access is permitted. It became automated in 1979 and was designated a Chicago landmark in 2000. Like on the Willis or Sears Tower, are considered add-ons with a secondary technical function and therefore do not count in the official height. You may remember the final confrontation scene between Batman and the Joker in the 2008 film The Dark Knight. It was shot at the construction site of the then partially completed Trump Tower. Later, the tower was also one of the key locations used for the 2011 film Transformers: Dark of the Moon. Here we have a view of some of America's tallest buildings. The tall, white rectangular building is the Aon Center. It was completed in 1973, originally for Standard Oil, and was designed by Perkins and Will. The Aon Center stands at 1,136 feet and has 83 stories. Although 875 North Michigan Ave, the John Hancock Center, technically has more stories than Aon, the top quarter of the Hancock Tower is comprised of residential floors, which tend to be shorter than office floors. So Aon is in fact taller than Hancock. On May 14, 2018, the owners unveiled a $185 million proposal for an observatory atop the Aon Center. The observatory would feature a thrill ride called Sky Summit and an external glass elevator system which would be the tallest and fastest in the country. The Willis Tower, formerly known as the Sears Tower, the black rectangles of glass and steel with two white broadcast antennae on top due west of Grant Park, was the tallest building in the world from its completion in 1973 until 1998. It has 110 stories and measures 1,450 feet tall. It includes an observatory on the 103rd floor known as the Sky Deck. The Sky Deck is open every day from 9:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. and features plexiglass boxes on the western side called the Ledge, where visitors can step out and look straight down. The inspiration for the Ledge came from hundreds of forehead prints visitors left behind on Sky Deck windows every week. From the memorable scene in the John Hughes film Ferris Bueller's Day Off to curious children going right up to the window, visitors are constantly trying to catch a glimpse below. Now, thanks to the Ledge, they have a unique and unobstructed view of the city. Willis Tower is actually a series of 9 rectangles of different heights brought together for strength and flexibility. The different sized rectangles brought together are stronger than one tall single rectangle. Much like a bundle of sticks clutched together is harder to snap in half than a single stick. This is known as the stagger design, which remains the template for today's tallest buildings. The tall building to the left or south of Willis Tower with a cylindrical top is 311 South Wacker Drive. At 961 feet tall, it was once the tallest reinforced concrete building in the world. The top of the building is a 105-foot tall, translucent cylinder surrounded by 4 other small cylinders. This makes it among the most visible Chicago skyscrapers at night when its crown is brightly illuminated. The 5 cylinders on top are lit by 1,852 fluorescent tubes, and a lantern at the top changes colors for holidays and special events. For a complete detailed tour of Chicago's downtown architecture, we offer 75-minute Chicago River architecture tours from March through November. Visit our box office for more information or visit shorelinesightseeing.com. The Shoreline Park system was inspired by architect Daniel Burnham's city plan of 1909, in which he pledged the city would keep its original promise that the lakefront would remain forever open, free, and clear, so that all citizens could enjoy the beautiful lakeshore without interference from industrial development. Since the 1830s, the official motto of Chicago has been Urbs in Horta, Latin for city and a garden, for its commitment to parkland. Chicago has 4 major lakefront parks: Lincoln Park, Grant Park, Burnham Park, and Jackson Park. Lincoln Park, on the north side, is Chicago's largest park, visited by over 20 million people each year. It is home to the Lincoln Park Zoo, one of the last free zoos in the United States. Lincoln Park Zoo is open 365 days a year. There are 3 harbors in the downtown area. Just south of Navy Pier is DuSable Harbor, named for our first permanent resident, the fur trader John Baptiste Point DuSable. South of DuSable is Monroe Harbor, named for the 5th U.S. President, James Monroe. Then south of the museum campus is Burnham Harbor, named after the famed Chicago architect and city planner, Daniel Burnham. The entire visible shoreline is in fact landfill, which has been built out into the relatively shallow lakefront, gradually starting after the Great Fire of 1871. The burned out remains of the downtown were dumped into the lake, creating the base for today's parks. The landfill does not consist of domestic trash. It's mostly soil and sand and construction debris. Michigan Avenue represents the original natural shoreline of Lake Michigan. Chicago's museum campus is a 57-acre addition to Grant Park's southeastern end. The museum campus is the site of 3 of the city's most notable museums, all dedicated to the natural sciences: Adler Planetarium, Shedd Aquarium, and the Field Museum of Natural History. The Field Museum was established with a generous grant from the family of Chicago retailer Marshall Field and includes Sue, the largest and most complete T-Rex yet uncovered. A narrow and some long Solidarity Drive connects Northerly Island to the rest of the museum campus situated on the mainland. The dome-shaped structure out on the tip of the Northerly Island is Adler Planetarium. It houses the Doan Observatory, one of the only research-active urban observatories open to the public. Beyond the museum campus, to the south is Soldier Field, home of the Chicago Bears. Opened in 1924 as Municipal Grant Park Stadium, it was renamed Soldier Field in honor of Army veterans of World War I. Soldier Field has served as the home venue for a number of other sports teams in its history, including the Chicago Cardinals of the NFL, the University of Notre Dame football team, and the Chicago Fire of Major League Soccer. It also hosted games from the 1994 FIFA World Cup. The Chicago Cardinals used it as their home field for their final season in Chicago in 1959. A dozen years later, in September of 1971, the Chicago Bears moved in. The Bears previously played at Wrigley Field, best known as the home of the Chicago Cubs. The interior of the stadium underwent